I've been thinking about how A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms has been so different from every other fantasy adaptation that I've seen, and I just can't move on. There's something about how quiet it is and yet so deliberate that is packing a punch that I'm not sure many of us were ready for. And it's clearly working. People are raving about it, and I am about to be one of them. Compared to its sibling shows, House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones, it is a much smaller story. There are no wars, no dragons, no fight for the throne. And that's why it's working. It's intimate. And when the world isn't falling apart, character becomes the battlefield. And that's the brilliance of the show. The characters have been built so well that they can carry the show. You don't need the big conflict or the big scary dragons to carry it for you. And why is it working? It's because of the source material. After I sat and binge watched the entire show in one sitting, because I was actually enthralled, I had to go out and get the book. I needed to see how George R.R. Martin managed it. And he is a pro at this. I wouldn't expect anything less from him, but by goodness, it swept me off my feet. The detail here is that it's not a book, not like the other ones. It's 3 novellas in one book. And novellas are so underrated for adapting to the screen. They have to be tighter, and that's what is working here. Novellas have to convince you to like the characters or hate the characters sooner and faster. It has to build the world around them in a way that is easy, but doesn't take 10 pages just to introduce the conflict. Everything has to be so much tighter. The writing has to be that much sharper. Compared to the other stories, which had a lot of point of view characters and sections, this one only has one. That means that the conflict is so much clearer, it's so much more contained. It also means that we get to stay with the character longer. In the other shows and other shows like it, we have to jump from one character to another just to keep moving the story forward, and we're often wondering, wait, what was happening? I can't remember, let's go back. Where were they last season or last episode? Hold on. With this one, we get to stay with Dunk, and we get to be right there with him the entire time, and we're just sitting in a tavern with him. Or partying. That's what he ends up doing most of the time anyway, right? That means that the conflict is contained. There's no fighting dragons over here and fighting war over here and arguing with our husband in another one. It's one continuous story. It also means that there is one central moral dilemma. It's very clear, very concise, which means that the theme is very clear. And we don't have to do much work, but the writing does all the work for us because it's constantly there. And it's a theme that we can all relate to. We're not all knights. We're not going to wake up in the morning and have to challenge another knight to a sword fight. But at the same time, that's not the theme. Duncan is continuously showing us the theme, which is, am I good enough? And do I deserve the position that I'm working towards? Am I a true knight? And that is a very human conflict. Am I good enough? And am I good? So why is the audience just eating this up? Here's my theory. Modern audiences with fantasy today are taught to expect escalation. We saw this in the other shows. More dragons, more war, more explosions. Everything has to get bigger to get better. This story doesn't do that. Then there's something radical about a story that refuses to escalate. And it gives it some different kind of momentum and different kind of weight that we can sit with longer and maybe laugh along with rather than feel stressed. And that's possible because of the driver of the plot. In most epic fantasy, the other shows and books included, the plot is driving the story forward. Something happens, the characters have to respond, and then the story will continue. But in this instance, Character drives the plot forward. Dunk and Egg are making choices that are personal to them, and that is driving the plot forward one way or another. However they act drives the plot in that direction. It feels a lot more intimate that way. So what's driving this plot specifically is Dunk's internal code. And man, does he have a code. Because he has been taught one way that a knight should be, and he is learning along the way that most knights aren't fulfilling that. That's internal conflict right there. It's also creating external conflict. And that is his bar that he's trying to match every day. And then there's his insecurities. Despite his size, he is so insecure and so emotionally uncertain that he almost gets in the way of himself all the time. He is so insecure about who he is and how worthy he is and how capable. Everyone expects this big man to be able to do big man things, and he's constantly holding himself back. And then you throw in Egg's intelligence and his perspective. He creates a perfect balance to Dunk because he is grounded and intelligent, but still boyish. The two of them working together creates a momentum in the story that just works magnificently. So the tension of the story isn't about will the kingdom fall, it's will Dunk make the right decision? And will Dunk survive? And at the end, if he does survive, is he worthy of what he's done or achieved? So why do the novellas translate to the screen so well? In the novellas, the arcs are contained. It's one novella per season so far, and they actually have plans for 2 more seasons. Lucky us. There's also this strong character focus. We get to follow the characters along through seasons and through the one season for right now, but everything is so driven by them already that there's very little that we have to build out in terms of world. We don't have to know the other stories in order to understand this one. We don't need to know the rest of the world in order to appreciate what's going on in this specific moment in time. The pacing control is so much easier because the novella is built just like a season would be built. And more importantly, what I found fascinating was that the scenes of the novellas were split up pretty well for separate episodes. I was fascinated by that. There's also a cleaner emotional through line. That's because there's fewer perspectives, fewer people, and just less going on. It just made it so much easier for people to read and therefore easier for people to watch. There's a lot less work for the viewer to do because the story's already doing it. Game of Thrones translated really well. It was one of my first favorite fantasy shows for season 1. And then after that, it had to keep escalating, and it got so big at one point where it was struggling under its own scale. And I think by the end, it was struggling by its own weight. And I think that's the point I'm trying to make. We as modern viewers expect fantasy to always be bigger. We have been taught that escalation is what makes the story matter. But what Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is proving is that they don't have to escalate and spread to matter. Sometimes they just need to get closer. Anyway, that's my rabbit hole of the day.